I am, yeah. And I'm going to talk about trade unions generally, really, in the spirit of the theme of this conference, which is coming together. And something that we've heard, I think, throughout the morning, the power and the strength that we get when we're together. But also some of the challenges that this community in particular face. So I will just share my slides. Okay, so just to start with that word, it's used a lot, but it's what we're doing today, isn't it? We are today a collective. We've got a common purpose, which is to come together, to share research, to explore identity, and yeah, we are a group. We are a collective. So it started here, Abby, today. The collective of artist educators working in adult community learning. But yeah, what does that mean in practical terms? That's what I'm going to talk to you about. But I want to start by sharing, if I can, new share, a little bit of an example of a very exciting moment of collective action.
By the transformation of the whole town, with a wonderful Turner Contemporary and so many galleries, studios, and creative spaces. It is a testament to the impact that art and artists can have on the world around us. I've experienced this myself, having had the privilege of meeting and working with some incredible artists and creative figures. They have been a constant source of inspiration for me. I think art, like fashion, can tell a story about celebrating difference, can show how diverse people are, challenging ideas of race, gender, and sexuality, and tackling important issues in the world that we live in together. You can see this so strongly in the work of all four of this year's Turner Prize nominees. And now, I have great pleasure in announcing the winner. Okay. Well, as we're speaking of the power of creativity, here's something quite extraordinary. At a time of political division in Britain and conflict in much of the world, the artists wanted to use the occasion of the Turner Prize to make a strong statement of community and solidarity, and have formed themselves into a collective. The jury felt such a shared commitment to urgent social and political causes should be recognized at the present time. They have unanimously agreed to award the 2019 Turner Prize to the collective formed by the four nominees.
Okay, yeah, I've got to say that was just an electric moment. I was in the audience that evening. I live in East Kent and I've worked with Turner Contemporary for many years. It was lovely to be there, but what an electric moment. And I've got to say, I jumped to my feet and punched the air when Edward Enninful announced that the artist had decided in that spirit of solidarity to form a collective. That was absolutely incredible. Now, everyone was on their feet. but I doubt that anyone was as thrilled to hear the word solidarity being used as me as General Secretary of a trade union. And I can honestly say, you know, in all the years I've been attending kind of events, arts events, it's not a word that I'd heard used in those spaces, actually, until then. I'd heard it on picket lines, on marches, heard it at the Tolpuddle Martyrs Festival, yes, but not glitzy arts awards ceremonies. It really was astonishing. And, you know, the award-winning collective then, you know, they collected their prize and they spoke really movingly about the shared values that they discovered when they were brought together by the competitive prize process. They actually found themselves gravitating together with dialogue and moving into co-creation, which doesn't happen in these prize competitions normally, I think. But at some point, it became really apparent to them that their messages of social justice and equality and fairness could actually be amplified if they used the prize platform to make a statement of solidarity. So basically, they flipped the board and disrupted the competition. It was quite a moment, I think, you know, and I'd invite you to think about the last time that you did something that you describe as a collective endeavor, the last time you had that feeling of solidarity, you know, and the level of comfort and thrill that may have come with that. So yeah, values, collective values. I remember looking around the room that evening, and I was pretty sure, statistically, it was likely that I was the only trade union general secretary in the room. It was generally the arts, great and good. But there probably weren't that many in the audience who were actually members of a trade union. You know, and why is that in that arts space? Well, lots of reasons that you will all be familiar with, you know, the freelance nature of the work, often precarious contracts, just perhaps a sense that trade unions don't operate in those kind of employment spaces. But it really did strike me that here we had what I think you could almost describe as two great movements, the movement of socially engaged arts practice and practitioners, and the movement of trade unionism, sharing the same values, but in that room, actually, at that point, actually very limited overlap. And, you know, we think about what trade union values are. And here they are: equality, fairness, justice, dignity, respect. That belief that people can achieve more when they act together than individually. That was essentially what the Turner Prize Collective declared that evening. But those are also, once you insert the word working people, those are the values of the trade union movement that we have here. It's interesting, visual artists are generally not organised in the workplace, their workplaces, fractured as they often are. They're not organised to the same extent as musicians and performing arts, where there is really strong union activity. We've all heard of equity, and where paying conditions generally in those sectors are better. And I will return to that notion of paying conditions for those people who are working the visual arts. But teachers, when we think about teachers, particularly in compulsory phase education, are overwhelmingly likely to be in a trade union. There are lots of reasons for that, around that feeling of needing to be protected in what can be quite vulnerable spaces when you're working with lots and lots of people. HE also tends to have very good trade union representation. So I wonder, what about the artists, teacher, educators who sit in the kind of intersection between arts practice and pedagogy, working in education? It's also fair to say as well that for those working in adult community learning, there are a whole range of employment issues that are very specific to the sector. You know, perhaps you're employed on a permanent contract basis, or maybe a sessional basis, or a 0 hours contract. Maybe you work for a local authority or a charity. Maybe you're a freelancer. And then there's the work that you do in your own practice. And I heard, really that interesting stories about that from one of the presenters in the session I was just in. If you feel inclined, please do share in the chat the kind of employment that you're in or have been in recently. It'd be really interesting to see the range of contexts that you're working in. And I would also add that for artist educators, there are the additional issues around our subject and the ongoing necessary work to make the case for value for what we do, for the arts, for the visual arts. Because if your subject isn't valued, what you teach, what you practice, then your work isn't being valued either. And that's why NSEAD, in fact, exists as both a subject association championing the subject and as a trade union working directly to support people in the workplace. We very much address that intersection between workplace-specific issues and the special needs of the specialist. I would say, if you are a working person, earning a living, making a crust through your labours, then I'd suggest that being part of a trade union should be an essential. So I'm going to talk a bit about what a trade union is for, what it means to be part of that collective movement that is working together to secure each other's safety, security, conditions and fair pay, wherever it is you work, however it is you make a living. Let me introduce you to our origins story, though, before I go any further. I would say that this group here are the original artists collective. It definitely started with them in 1888. This was a group of art school principals from across the UK. They came together with a shared sense of purpose, which was they were concerned that the subject, art, as it was then, didn't have enough status, that it was a subject of the utmost national importance and needed to be recognised as such. And then those teaching that subject needed to be supported in their professional practice and in the workplace. And I think it's fair to say that we've been doing that ever since. It is important, I think, to say that we are the only subject specialist education trade union. The maths educators don't get their own special trade union, they have to go with the generic ones. And there are, of course, general education trade unions that you absolutely can join. And there are artist trade unions as well, but we're the only one that kind of meets those two communities in the middle. And our membership includes art educators, artist teachers working everywhere in all sectors, spaces and phases. But to this, just to say a little bit about this group here, and the things they did back in the day. Their first battle was to get graduate status awarded to those studying art within their institutions, because at that time, despite the requirements of study in the subject being way more rigorous actually than almost any other subject discipline, that study wasn't rewarded with degree status, with degree qualification. So these people in this photograph put their minds to that, and within a few years they achieved it. So the status of the subject, that notion of equity, professional recognition, that's what they were concerned with. Things we're still working to preserve and protect today. The next battle they took on was about pay, actually, because science teachers, that's what they were kind of comparing with, were earning much more than art teachers doing the same work. And that was because at the time, payment was by results, the number of students you got through your course. And basically, the assessment requirements for the science courses were less stringent than those for the art courses. So fewer students were completing than the science, so you get less pay regardless of the hours work, quality of performance, etc. Does that sound familiar in 2023? Yeah, we're still working to protect pay and challenge unfair and inappropriate assessment processes. But I'll move on to now, what a trade union does today, because the work of trade unions, the profile and the influence of trade unions has certainly shifted across the centuries. you know, from a real peak, we might think back in the 1970s, to a point where industrial relations legislation is very restrictive. However, it is still a powerful movement working to support workers across the world. What do trade unions achieve? Well, when working people stand together and negotiate as one, on average, those people in trade unions, those places where trade unions are recognised, see higher pay than non-members. They get better sickness and pension benefits, more paid holiday, more right to flexible working hours. These are very tangible things that improve our lives. More respect at work. Our unions argue for working people to be treated with respect, opposing downgrading and closing pension schemes, or opposing intrusive surveillance. And you know, education certainly is one of the most surveyed areas of work, I think, anywhere, perhaps apart from being an Amazon delivery driver, perhaps. But yeah, all important, really working for that culture of respect. Bullying and discrimination, sadly, far too often an issue for far too many people at work, whether that is, you know, on grounds of protected characteristics and discrimination, or just because you are unlucky to work with a manager or colleagues, you know, where things aren't working. Health and safety are really important, and ensuring that employers meet their legal responsibilities. Giving legal help when things go wrong, that is something that trade unions do and support you with, and they will support cases to go as far as they need to ensure that you get justice. Help with career, they're about training, they're about education, and obviously NCAD is very much about that as a learned society and subject association, so that's something that we run with in a very strong specialist way. And just generally, you know, thinking about shifting the dial, making workplace culture better, whatever that is. And of course, trade unions represent every kind of sector and every kind of work. We're a bit different, of course, as I've said, we are specialists. So what we do comes with a very informed perspective of what it means to be working within arts practice, within studio settings, with all the kind of status issues that go with the subject as well, which then often have a big knock on those notions of respect and ability to negotiate. We do work differently in terms of how we're structured. We don't have reps everywhere, so you wouldn't kind of be having to be in a workplace where there is another member of NCAD to support you as a rep. You ring us, we pick up the phone, and the person who might talk to you next is Sean here. Sean Taylor's our senior casework officer, and Sean is just absolutely fantastic in his knowledge, in his dedication and perseverance, but also his humanity. He listens and he hears the human stories. And everybody always says, when they talk to one of our people, they feel better instantly because they know they're not alone. And they know that they're working with somebody who's got real expertise, because that's what they do. That is their job. So, you know, if you're part of our union, you may well get the chance to talk to Sean. But what's it about? You know, is it all about the money? I think probably the biggest story that we're perhaps all aware of at the moment when we think about trade unions is industrial action, because it's everywhere, isn't it? Right the way across the public sector, whether that is junior doctors, nurses, or indeed teachers, educators who are actually exercising their right to withdraw their labour. That is very much the story of the moment, and that is collective action. That is people coming together and saying, we're going to do this because negotiations aren't working, and we now, you know, together we're going to show you that we've reached a breaking point, and that, you know, that's often what it's about. But collective action and shifting the dial, changing things, winning better terms and conditions, winning pay rises isn't always about strikes. the important thing to know is that anybody who does go out on strike, whether it's in your workplace, whether it's in your sector, the fact that they are doing that, the fact that they're sacrificing a day's pay and beyond, and they're coming together with one voice, means that everybody benefits. We all benefit when colleagues make that stand. And that colleague, that fellow worker, might be a train driver. It might not be you, and you might have very personal reasons why you think that strike action isn't the way. Not everybody does feel that that is something they can support. I have to say, NCAD members are not taking part in strike action. We did not have a mandate for that from the members, and a lot of that is to do with our structure, that our members often are the only one working in their workplace, and so it's working slightly differently. But what we do is we stand in solidarity, and we've got lots of ways that we support those people who are standing up. We stand up with them, and it's important because actually in the sector there are massive inequities. I don't know if anybody has come across and read this report from Industria. Industria is a pair of artists who have came together to pull together data gathered through a survey that they conducted called Artist Leaks, and they were probing the state of artists' pay and working conditions. So not educators, but artists, which of course absolutely is the people in this room. They look particularly at pay and working conditions where artists were working in the public sector, which might be working on artist commissions, it might be working for publicly funded museums and galleries or all kinds of spaces. It's data that's often elusive and hidden from public view, and it is in this report, which has a strong and direct title, but I've got to say the conclusions justify it. They lay bare the damage that undervaluing and underpaying certain groups of workers does. It is corrosive. And when we're talking about bad pay for artists, we're talking about setting a culture, which means only those people who can afford to do it can be part of it. So creating really a homogenous and elitist art world. So it's cyclical. If you undervalue and underpay people for the work they do, you will restrict who's part of it. This report found that pay by the majority of the people contributed to the survey was sub-minimum wage, as little as £2.60 an hour in many cases. Shocking. But as well as the pay, there's the conditions, late payment, lack of respect for time and boundaries, unrealistic expectations, false promises, suggestions that the honour of working with the institution should be payment enough. Now, I don't know if any of that rings true for any of you or people that you work alongside, but this is what the Industria report has revealed, and it's certainly what I hear from far too many people making their living through their arts practice. And the point is back to this notion of justice and the collective. These issues are all bound up with equalities issues. That overarching precarity of artists' livelihoods means that those who are left with less security because of the structural inequalities of society are much more likely to just drop out, burn out, not take part. So it matters because it skews and it starts to change the arts collective as much as anything. And there is the report makes 5 really great recommendations, but one of them is join a union, because unions are doing the work that is required to get things like a fight for a £15 an hour minimum wage, which could begin to transform the sector. It is all about being stronger together. So that that recommendation to artists to join a union is one that I would just absolutely echo. To the artist of you and the educator in you, find the union that is right for you, because as Sam said in her keynote this morning, we are stronger together. We work together to achieve common goals. NSCAD is part of the Trades Union Congress, which represents 48 unions, and that is 5.5 million workers in total. That is some voice. And the annual Congress brings together representatives from that 5.5 million army to decide what the issues that are going to campaign on in the coming year will be, and it's all democratically agreed. So, you know, by being part of that massive collective coming together in democratic processes, we can shift the dial for the whole of society and working conditions without. So as well as that individual protection and support that you get by being part of a trade union, you're doing so much more. You contribute your voice, you contribute your action, and frankly, you contribute your subs payments to make all that work possible. So I'll just finish by saying, you know, please, if you're not part of a union, find one that's good for you, join one. There are unions for education that cover the general education population, UCU, NEU, NASUT, to name just three. There are also, as I said, artist-specific unions, small in scale, but working very hard for their members. The Artists Union of England, Praxis, Scottish Artists Unions are ones you might consider. However, I'm going to say you really should join NSCAD because we are the ones that are tailor-made for this community, I believe. And artist educators have been driving work for NSCAD since 1888. I just want to plug the fabulous new Artist Educator Directory that we launched yesterday. If you're part of our trade union, you automatically are eligible to advertise what you do. If you are somebody who wants to advertise freelance services through that Artist Educator Directory. And there is, of course, so much more that I believe you will gain if you're part of a subject-specific community. But whatever, it really is about finding what works for you and just getting your voice in that collective spirit. Thank you.